Instead of Giles, it's
It's
Gilet.
Rude G and the
Rick Giles.
Thanks,
Cool,
ma'am.
thank you.
No worries. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Cheers, dude.
Right.
Big G dog.
Big G dog. G unit.
G doggy dog.
Right.
G unit.
G
you say?
unit.
It's big G unit.
Right, Giles.
Yeah.
We're doing an episode today on trusting your gut.
So we're going to have something to help our guts.
Yeah, we're going to have a ginger shot.
We've got to do this simultaneously.
Oh, God.
It is quite
scared.
gingery.
Oh.
You ready? It's supposed to be delicious and yummy, and you're like,
It's a shot. It's
Ugh.
supposed to be quite difficult to stomach, apparently.
ready?
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Well, it burns. It actually burns.
Whew. Oh, it's fiery. Our guts are going to thank us for this, though.
Yeah.
So,
Our guts
right.
are going to be so good.
Overall, our guts are going to be so strong, we can't help but trust them.
Yeah.
Giles, in your opinion,
Sophie.
why do we not trust our gut?
Why do we not trust our gut? Well, I've read quite a lot about these theories around our three brains, and how, sort of, there's quite a lot of ancient tribes in the Amazon and Aboriginal tribes who solely work on their gut instincts.
What are the three brains?
So the three brains are obviously your gut brain, which we're obviously talking about gut instincts. So that initial thought that you get,
Your intuition.
Your intuition, yeah, those feelings when you get those little knots in your stomach, I guess. But I think for some people, particularly us in the West, maybe because of maybe our environments or like its circumstances or our past traumas or what it could, we sort of filter these initial thoughts or feelings. We filter them through our hearts, being your second brain, and then your actual brain. It gets filtered through these three things. So by the time it gets to your brain, you start ruminating on it and everything. That gut instinct, that initial instinct, that intuition is kind of filtered.
I feel like we live in quite a cerebral world. We use our brains for most things, especially with work and stuff like that, and even relationships and friendships and things like that. Why do you think, as a culture, we don't really trust our gut as much, or sometimes even our hearts?
I think some of it is to do with our environments, perhaps, our past experiences, which is an interesting one, the past experiences thing, because you would think, actually, if you actually go back and think about stuff, perhaps you go, I should have trusted my gut on that, or I should have lent into my intuition or something, because often that is, you'll go back in hindsight. But yet, again, we still make the same mistakes. Why that is, I don't know. I think probably because we are influenced by other things. We don't allow our own intuition, to trust our own selves in many instances.
Yeah, what it comes down to is trust, right?
Yeah. We
don't trust our guts. We don't sometimes even trust our hearts. And that's a fear thing. That's a fear-based thing. I think we all grow up thinking if you trust your logical thinking brain, then you're most likely to succeed in whatever you're doing. But actually, that's not always the case, and can oftentimes lead people to live fairly unhappy lives if they're doing a job they don't love or living in a place they don't like, and they've gone down this path purely out of, logic and fear and all the rest of it, and ignored their gut. I think that's when people maybe have that feeling of like discomfort and unhappiness in their lives. So with that in mind, I want to talk to you a little bit about how we can use our gut to make decisions, and specifically how to interpret your gut instinct and your intuition and distinguish that between your gut and fear or emotion coming in. Because oftentimes we might get a feeling of like, oh, I don't want to do that, and think, oh, it must be my intuition telling me not to do something. But really it's just fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of abandonment, whatever that might be. So how can we tell the difference between our gut and fear?
It's tricky. It's really hard to do that, I think. It's hard to make that distinction sometimes. And I think often when we have a gut instinct about something, we're second guessing it then. And then we're starting to, I think we're very quick to ignore it. Do you know what? Even as something as silly, like I do a quiz thing online on my phone, and it's multiple choice, and I'll look at it, and my gut instinct will be to choose a particular answer, and I reckon I second guess myself every time, and about 80-90% of the time, my gut instinct on the answer would have been correct.
Do you know
but
what?
I always go for the one
Yeah.
that is the incorrect answer because I second guessing myself.
It's so funny because you're the second person to say that to me, maybe even this week, because I do, as you know, I do my pub quiz every week, and I do it with one of my friends, and he said to me the other day, he said, every single time we get a question, my gut tells me the answer, and then my logic kicks in, and I start thinking, well, it can't have been that because blah, 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 and then you start questioning yourself. And then when the answers come out and he's reading them out,
you're like, oh shit.
It literally every single answer, he's like, oh, I said that. Oh, I thought that. And we're all like, yeah, of course you did. Of course you did. Nobody believes him.
But if you think that something as trivial as that, like just a quiz question, you're not trusting your instincts on that. And yet when it comes to like more substantial kind of life decisions or even just kind of conversations to have with people, whatever it might be, or it might be about work or whatever it is, we don't go anywhere near it.
No, exactly. If we don't trust our intuition when it comes to a pub quiz, then it does not matter.
Yeah.
Why would we trust it when we're like picking out where we're going to live or which job we're going to take or anything like that? But I think ultimately what it comes down to is learning to tell the difference between what's fear and what's your intuition, because I think fear is an emotion. It's a very emotional thing, and it can come with panic and discomfort, whereas intuition, I feel, has less emotion attached to it. It just is.
Yeah.
So when I'm thinking back to times when I've had an intuitive feeling, when I look back in hindsight, there wasn't really any emotion behind it. It was just, actually I had a feeling that I should have done that. But I didn't pick up on it at the time because I'm so used to going off of either my emotion or my brain.
Do you think, and this is a question I'm just thinking of, like sometimes we mix up fear and intuition though, because I think when we get a gut instinct on something, it's often almost a similar feeling in a way physically. I'm thinking like manifests itself and maybe a knot in the stomach or an anxiety or whether, and that might be your instinct saying I shouldn't be doing that thing, and then or I should be because it's exciting, but then the fear kicks in and there's a bit of a crossover almost. I wonder if that's sometimes we're misreading ourselves.
Well, it's funny you should say that actually, because I was going to talk a little bit about learning to read your body, because I think that's something that we're massively disconnected from nowadays. Like people don't really pay much attention to how they're physically feeling unless it's like an actual problem or something's manifested in a big scale. We very rarely on a day-to-day basis just check in with our body and are like, right, how am I feeling right this second? Like, what's my body telling me? And your body always whispers to you until you get to a point where you're not listening, and then it has to start shouting at you. But I think that getting really good at listening to your body can help you to distinguish, because I think you're right. I think a lot of people do get mixed up. And you know, when you say your intuition or your gut, especially with women, because I will say women supposedly are supposed to have quite a strong maternal instinct. And, you know, you get stories about women who have been down a dark alleyway with a man, or in an elevator or something with a man, and had a horrible feeling, and it's that feeling of dread. Now, is that fear because you're in an elevator or on down an alleyway with a stranger, or is it your instinct telling you this person is dangerous? It's really hard to distinguish. But I think when it comes to decisions like life decisions and work decisions and relationships and where you live and stuff like that, that shouldn't hold as much emotional weight as it often does. I think you're right. I think people, like for example, just plucking an example out of thin air, work situations. Sometimes I'll have a work situation come up or an opportunity. It just doesn't feel right. And it doesn't feel bad. It doesn't feel scary. It doesn't feel like, oh, I don't know about that. I just think to myself, I don't need that. Like, it doesn't light me up. It doesn't fill me with joy. I don't think I really need to go down that route. And that's usually my instinct telling me, like, this isn't for you. Whereas when I get that feeling of like fear, dread, and like, oh God, it's usually because I'm scared of something. That's when I know I have to take the opportunity and I have to do it, because my fears are like, my ego's kicking in, so to speak.
I wonder sometimes actually with the instinct thing, like, that gut instinct, that it feels too quick, like it's too instantaneous. And actually it would be, because you'd be feeling it and you're thinking, okay, I'm not going to do that thing, or I'm going to rethink this or whatever. But I suppose that the rethinking is the thing that slows everything down. So it feels almost like societal, or maybe it's cultural, or it's just just a human instinct to think things through. Like we have to think things through. We have to analyze stuff to death until we kind of come up with what we think is the right solution, because it's like the thing to do. Like if you just suddenly decided to do something, people are like, have you not thought this through? And you'd be like, well, and actually you should be saying, no, I haven't thought it through. It felt right or felt wrong, and so that's the decision I made. But actually we don't allow ourselves to do that, because we feel like we should be thinking it through. We should be taking our time and then letting all these other kind of thoughts and feelings enter into our decision making.
It's true. And sometimes, even on a really small scale, like when you get that feeling of like, oh, I want to give so and so a call, someone you haven't spoken to for years, and you give them a call for no reason, and you just intuitively think like, oh, I'll do that, why not? And you do it, and then you end up having this conversation about something else that you're doing, or like a project you're working on, or it's all very serendipitous, and you could look back and think, oh, I followed my gut, and it panned out. On the other hand, you might think, oh, I'm going to give so-and-so a call, and then be like, I haven't spoken to for ages, they're probably busy, I won't bother. And you never find out what could have happened if you had given them a call. But ultimately, you don't need to use that as evidence not to use your intuition, to use your intuition or whatever it might be. So I was going to say, what I find quite useful, and I do this personally, is writing down, it might be once a week, it could be once a month, all the times that you followed your intuition and what was the outcome, and almost use that as proof to yourself. So you might say, oh, well, I had the intuitive hit to phone this person up and then this happened, or I decided I was going to say no to that job because it didn't feel right, and I was right. And then you start to build up in your head a picture of what it's actually like to follow your intuition and to trust your gut, and it gives you a bit more confidence in yourself.
Yeah, I wonder if you could even do that in the moment, actually, when you feel that initial feeling, whether it physically manifests or whatever, and then you write that down in that moment, and then you can look back at it, or even like, give yourself, if the other things that we've talked about, like you do start to let the other parts of your brain and your heart kick in, and you're into your decision making, you can then just go back an hour later and say, oh, do you know what, that was what I was thinking when I first thought that, or that's the feeling I had straight away. Maybe that's the right one. Yeah,
they do say, don't they, in business, that you should make decisions very quickly, because at the end of the day, if you've got two options, they're both right. Even if one option ends in disaster, it's still a lesson learned. There's still benefits to that, and there'll still be a reason why you needed to have gone down that route. So either way, it's going to be a win-win. So they do say, I've heard some books and podcasts and stuff like that say, if you're in business, if you have a decision to make it in a split second, just do it, because you need to get really good at just making decisions quite quickly, and then you build that muscle, and you start to be a bit more intuitive in your business as well. But then on the other hand, there's also intuition with people too. I honestly do believe sometimes when you meet someone and you just intuitively don't get on with them, or feel great about them as a person, or you feel that they're amazing as a person, or you just might not feel that chemistry. I do genuinely think that is your intuition also giving you a little insight into what that person's energy is like. Well,
it feels like your intuition or your gut feelings are sort of safeguarding you in some way sometimes.
Yeah.
And like you say, sometimes you do, like particularly with other people, you might get an energy off them or something, and there's little alarm bells are going in your tummy or whatever it might be, saying, maybe swerve this, But again, don't always listen to them, and then it's not till late down the line you're like, I always knew that one was a wrong one or something. But it's not until you've gone through some bad situation, and then you end up ruminating about it for months and months. And then like you're like, I should have just trusted my instinct in the first place.
Oh, that's
We've all done that though.
Well, exactly. The amount of times,
and we will do it again.
Well, you hear people all the time saying, "Oh, I knew that was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen," or "I knew that about that person," or "Oh, I had a feeling that this was the case." And it's like, well, how many times before we actually start listening to that voice? Like, it's there for a reason. And like I said at the beginning of the episode, I think that when we ignore it for long enough, we just make these decisions based off like fear and scarcity and like societal expectations and stuff like that. That's when we end up kind of pinning ourselves into a corner of decisions that we didn't really make intuitively. They're just making us a bit miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. So for our listeners, as a bit of a takeaway, you've mentioned there maybe writing stuff down. There's a good way of kind of logging those moments. Yeah,
so I do it once a month. Just at the end of each month, I do like what I call a monthly like roundup or a monthly check-in. Yeah, exactly. Where I just look back and I think, how was the month? What things happened that were great? What did I make happen? What did I overcome? You know, stuff like that. What areas of my life do I need to work on, maybe, or areas of my life where I might need a little bit more help? And then I think about the intuitive little hits or downloads or pings or whatever you might call them. What little hits did I follow, and did I choose to acknowledge and not ignore? And sometimes it's literally just as simple as like, I reached out to that person, or I decided to post this on Instagram or Twitter or something. Sometimes it's literally, you're just sitting there and you think, I might just post a picture of this on social media, and then someone that you haven't spoken to for a while comments on it, and a conversation gets started, and you just never know. So I like to make a note of all the things that I have done in that regard, and then the outcomes of that, and it just sort of strengthens that muscle. I think sitting with your body and feeling how you're feeling, check in with your body, feel how you're feeling as well, is a really powerful one. I don't do it nearly enough. I don't know about you, but I'm not great at checking in with my body and feeling how I feel. But when something comes up, is it giving you like heart palpitations and like clammy hands? If it is, that's a fear response. That's a you problem. That's not like an intuitive thing, in my opinion. Just being a little bit more open to trusting that gut. Yeah, and letting some things be decided that way. I need to go and like do my quiz on my online quiz. I need to. Yeah, it's a real addiction. What I mean is, I need to have a go at doing it, but literally just trusting my instincts and my gut on it, then see what the outcome is, because I'm pretty sure I have better scores. I was going to say as well, I think like it's quite a heavy topic, but it doesn't need to be. I think having fun with it, making it an experiment. And so I do this quite a lot in lots of aspects of my life, is I turn it into an experiment, like whatever it might be. If it's money related or work related or relationships and friendships, I like to try and turn things into an experiment as like a what if, because then you detach any real, outcome that you need. There's no desperation involved. There's no like, well, what if it goes wrong? Because then it's going to be fearful no matter what. Whereas if you're like, do you know what, just for fun, I'm just going to go on my intuition on this one and just make this decision really, really quickly. And do you know what, if it all goes wrong, I don't care. You just have to live with the consequences of that. But then at least you've tested the waters. Yeah, and it becomes more fun. Yeah. It's like a game. And you turn anything into a game and it just becomes more enjoyable, and it's a win-win. So, if you start making decisions from that place of like playfulness and fun, and everything's a fun little game or a little experiment, that's how you start to like, it's a bit like when you're a baby and you're learning to walk in a safe environment. It's not going out into the real world yet and like, go on, off you go onto the road. But I wonder, actually, as children, we probably were trusting our guts a little bit more on things, and that kind of gets not beaten out of us, but as we get older, other things influence the way we think and feel. 100%. And we don't, it's kind of drummed out of us a little bit. Yeah, Yeah, like we were literally just talking about this in an episode with Gabby, weren't we? And she was saying, you know, as children we like run around, we play, we jump in puddles, we sing, we have no filter, we don't care what other people think. And yeah, as you get older, you start to become more sort of like embarrassed or scared of failing or scared of people rejecting you or whatever it might be. And you lose that sort of intuitive rawness and that authenticity, I think. So it's a really good point. It's so true. Yeah, I think we need to go back to basics.
Absolutely. Well, I'm definitely going to get a little journal and write down those moments.
Yeah, I would highly recommend it. I probably need to do it more, to be fair. But yeah, it's something that I'm passionate about, because it's really fun when you start to go down that route of, like, you know.
Yeah, and I think you probably will notice that those moments where you do trust your gut are actually the right ones.
Totally.